All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have MikelParis. MikelParis is a man of many talents. He is the keyboardist to the band O.A.R. He's a singer-songwriter and a guitarist, and one with a very unique style. He calls it guitar drumming. And I've heard of percussive guitar playing, but this is played, the guitar's laid flat, and his left hand is doing a lot of work with his thumb, while the other hand is applying the rhythmic aspects. It's really cool. It's hard to explain without seeing it. So when we listen to a tune, I recommend you guys look up the video to see how it's actually done. Anywho, Michael has an album coming out. It's called Guitar Drumming 1. It has a lot of cool features on it. It's going to be available on all streaming platforms. Some of those features include G-Love, Of Good Nature, and Vernon Reid of Living Color. Yeah. Pretty sick. Mike was a super nice guy, and this was a really intriguing conversation. We're going to listen to a tune off the record, Guitar Drumming 1. This is Hit Me featuring G-Love. Hit Me is the tune. MikelParis is the artist, featuring G-Love. Guitar Drumming 1 is the album. March 28th, you can hear it everywhere on all streaming platforms. Before we get to this interview, some things that are going on with me. My band, C-Level, letters C-Level. We're a high-energy funk-punk reggae rock group that plays acoustic 12-string guitars ran through Marshall amps. We are opening for Pete Francis of the band Dispatch June 13th at the Winchester. And this is a super special show, not only because we're opening for a hero of ours, but we are actually going to be backing Pete as well. So we're going to be Pete's backing band. Yeah, that's pretty sick. Also, it's a celebration of our first single release. It's going to be called Long-Legged Fly. It features Pete Francis on vocals and guitar. It's going to be on all streaming platforms everywhere June 13th. The show's June 13th. Come hang out with us then. And lastly, if you hear anything you like, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Michael. And without any further ado, here's my conversation with MikelParis. Yeah, so that's where I'm coming from. I'm excited to chat with you, man. I really dig your style. It's very unique and very intriguing.
Thank you.
And I guess I wanted to start off by asking you what a snidbit is.
Oh, hey, yeah, it's a good question. That was something, born out of. Well, I mean, snidbit has kind of been a word with me. It's about mispronunciation of the other way, the snippet, right? But the mouthfeel of snidbit always felt better to me, having the D in the middle. And then during the madness, 2020 to 2022, where I was just incredibly prolific and live streaming every day, and I had a segment in my live stream called the Snidbit Workshop. And so I was going through my voice memos on my phone and finding an idea I was calling it a snidbit of an idea. And then during the live stream, and then during the course of a couple weeks, sort of fleshing out this into a song and then premiering it during the live stream and all this. So this idea of snidbits, so I wrote maybe 28 or 30 songs that were sort of in that snidbit workshop format, I guess. And so when it came time for me to really, okay, what is my release schedule? How am I starting to get all of this stuff out? Now that the music industry in the world is sort of, resuming, right, and restarting at that period, I was like, all right, let me get these snidbit songs, my favorite ones that seem to work together, and put that as a collection. And then there's going to be at least, obviously, another album of snidbits. Snidbits and Slippies is what is. Pretty sure that one's going to be called Snidbits and Slippies, because during the pandemic, during live streaming, I did like 380 cover songs, which was amazing. Getting to play these songs and learn these songs that I never played. It was an education for me during that period too. So much. But, there's the algorithms of Facebook and all the streaming service. The minute they see you performing a copyrighted material during a live stream, there's a chance that they're gonna shut you down. Yeah. They're gonna block you. And it happened to me a couple of times. And it happened to me when I was celebrating at that time it was 15 years with O.A.R. I talked to the band. I was like, hey, I want to celebrate and do some of my favorite songs from all the albums I've played at. And the rest of the guys like, of course, but they don't control the algorithms.
Right.
And that's one of the times I got shut down was playing, one of the songs I had co-wrote co-write on with the band. So I've learned a lot since then. But then that motivated me to figure out how can I slip in these cover songs into my originals and fool the algorithm. And for the most part, it worked. So the snidbits and the slippies, just those two words for me are very connected. That's why that sort of segued into that.
Dude, I love it. So is that how you got through it? Was like playing an original and going into a cover and then back to it?
I would start with the original, right? And I would keep the music going. I wouldn't have any interruption or break in the music.
Okay.
And I was reinterpreting a lot of the cover songs sort of in my own feels, paying homage to the original and then just sort of making it work within the context of one of my covers. And it pretty much worked. But now it's interesting because now if I just do like a cover song during a live stream that I'm doing, I'll get that copyright claim warning. And it happens with me.
Yeah.
Some of your material is owned by this artist, MikelParis. I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm like, I had to do that on Facebook the other day. I had to split revenue with myself.
Oh my God.
It was so funny.
It's insane. Because like I totally relate to that because during the pandemic here in Cleveland, what I ended up finding myself doing was just that, like kind of making this like creative schedule of like, okay, if I do this, I practice this and I have time to write.
Yeah.
And I also ended up doing a lot of streaming for local venues and learning how to makeshift these little streams, so we would stream concerts. So we ran into that all the time. And it's like, it's super exciting in a sense. Cause you're like, at that time, everyone was looking for anything to like get involved with, you know what I mean? And that was fun because people were interacting and you're like, whoa, but like at the same time, it was all these little hang-ups like that. And it forced you to be like, what's a camera switcher? How can I use, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah. No, I've integrated all of that stuff I learned from live streaming and all the software and hardware that I had to get into my live show now. Yeah. So I've got a projector and a rear projection screen, and I'm controlling stuff on the fly with my Stream Deck, I'm running everything through OBS and so I've got all these different camera angles and stuff I can do, and a visualizer integrated, audio reactive, and overhead camera of my guitar and my keyboard. So I can sort of like on the fly switch between all this stuff during my live shows when I can set everything up anyway. Right. But for me, it's important, to keep integrating the things that you learn, and make them part of your toolkit. I just want my toolkit to keep getting bigger and bigger. It continues to do that.
So with all this like kind of time to like to dive into the snidbits and like grow them into tunes and spending time working on these covers that you didn't really have time to prior, what were some of the kind of tools that fell into the toolbox from that experience, from that focused time?
I mean, the O.A.R. Spring Fling tour was canceled in the middle. We were in Charlottesville. We were in Charlottesville, and I was in a hotel for 3 days in Cleveland, waiting to see what was going to go on. What is going on? So the minute I got home, I was just like, all right, I've been wanting to do this TuneTrek live, this History Through Music show that I created as a live stream and present these episodes and talk about them and play music. And I just took 5 days and I just was online like, okay, what is the basic, like you were like, what are the basic things I need to be able to do this? And it was just about getting the hardware and learning the software. I had to educate myself. I had to figure out what cameras I could use and how to deal with latency.
That's a nightmare.
Oh, Jesus. I know. I figured out how to do, I did 3 segments where I interviewed somebody during Zoom live, and then we performed live together. Everyone was trying to figure out how to do that. So my technique for that was I was like, all right, there's still something valuable to be able to see the person that you're live recording with via Zoom, a song that we co-wrote. I did that with like 3 artists during the pandemic. And I just was whatever, like master and slave as far as what was controlling the tempo. So the person on the other one was hearing me singing and playing and was hearing, I had a backbeat that I put into I think at that time I had the Kronos, the Korg Kronos. So they were playing along to me. but I couldn't hear them. I had them muted. And then each of us were recording our separate audio and video on our ends. And then the artist or the guest would send me all their content. And then I would just ingest it into Pro Tools and Adobe Premiere and line everything up and make it work. So it wasn't like we were performing live in a live stream, but we were performing live together. So for me, that was really important because I felt like I was capturing the energy. Instead of just sending them a stereo track, you take your time, do your thing, send it back to me, which I've done. Obviously, we've all done that. There was something that I needed that connection maybe too during the pandemic. I needed to see other people. I needed to talk to people and work on a song with them creatively, do creative things with. I was just in my studio by myself, It was like, you're just. I mean, I always talk to myself anyway as an artist as I'm working through ideas, but that even went to the stratosphere of having imaginary assistants in the room with me during the live stream just to be funny and just but talking. So I learned so much from that, and the idea also of getting out of your comfort zone of how you write songs too. I'd never, I had all sorts of things up in place that I just didn't want anybody to hear anything until I thought it was perfect. And then you understand that nothing's ever going to be perfect. Things are always going to be evolving and changing. Even when you record it and release it, you're going to play it live and it's going to evolve and change, right? And so there was that for me during that period of time of letting that go. And so this Snidbit workshop, these working on these songs in front of a live audience, even if there was only 10 people watching, it ups the stakes, it ups the ante. And then I even did a tracking with MP segment where when I was ready to record my vocals or my guitar drumming on on the Snidbit workshop song that we were working on, I would do a late night live stream just for whoever wanted to watch. And I would actually record and track the songs live that I was going to use for the releases, but during the live stream in front of a live audience. And that for me just really was, okay, again, it's like, there's something about being by yourself and recording stuff, right? And having no influence of the outside world. I totally embrace that idea. But then there's also something about someone listening to what you're doing and being there while you're creating. And it feels a little different. It's you almost like your brain kind of feels like I have to really nail this.
Right.
I have to really put it all into this. And I would do a couple takes sometimes if I had to, but I was trying to go for the one take wonder on this stuff. I was just trying to be in the moment, feel it as if I was performing because there was people that were listening and watching, and that was a huge thing for me. And I've taken that now everywhere I go. And now it's like that whole idea of thinking everything needs to be perfect and, staying in your comfort zone, or those are just out the window for me. I'm just, and that was the big thing about collabing with people for this Guitar Drumming 1 album too, was getting a fresh take on some of these songs that have been with me for decades. I needed that. I needed that. And I needed to let go also of my control of, I need to be the one that's deciding everything about my songs because these are my babies. I feel like most musicians probably go through that. And then at some point, hopefully we realize, right, that outside input is sometimes good. You don't always have to have it, but there's times where you need it, and you need to embrace that. And so again, it was just like a prolific, incredibly growing, evolving last, 4.5 years for me, just musically and just personally, and emotionally and all that.
I think it's that one that's incredible, and it's crazy that it kind of took the world to shut down for a lot of people to find that, because I
know,
I relate to that a lot, because there was a lot of I found myself in a really when everything started going again, I'm like, man, I felt lazy, you know what I mean, because you know what I mean, for me, I had to develop a practice routine and a writing routine and just every day do this. And I felt like I was getting so much done and productive, just keeping this going. And then when it came back to going to work, I was like, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. I can hear that too. You're right. Yeah.
So one thing I found really interesting going through your catalog, especially, and you kind of touched upon it, was the track "Move It." That's been with you for a while.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, man.
What I was going to ask was, and I found videos of you doing it with just as the instrumental. Did it take that song in particular? Was there like was part of this kind of letting go and moving on, like the ability to like write the lyrics and really put a stamp on here's this song? Like, can you tell me a little bit of that song's journey?
That song is, again, it's one of the first songs I wrote during this guitar drumming style. As I was figuring out this technique and what am I doing and how can I not have it be looked at as a gimmick and me just and masturbatory. I wanted it to be just one of the ways that I write songs, and I just happened to be playing the guitar in this style. And so as I was sitting after I got into Stomp and those guys and being a part of that show really inspired me even more so to have confidence in something that maybe you've created and follow it and kind of pursue it to some degree and see where it goes. So I picked up the guitar again and Move It was really like, one of the early songs that I really, it became more than just me doing this rhythm and this groove and this open tuning and figuring out the techniques of how I'm hitting the string and what are my thumbs doing and what are my forefingers doing and how am I, it transitioned from that into an actual song. So initially it was just this acoustic thing. Yeah, I didn't really have lyrics for it, and it stayed that way for a while. But I had those lyrics for the most part. I had those lyrics I probably wrote them like 10 years ago, maybe, as I was sort of messing around with that song, because I've been playing that song out when I would do a solo show. That was, it's one of my classic, not to use that word, but hi, how are you? I'm MikelParis. This is guitar drumming. Check it. And I go into that song. Like, that's the first song often during like a live set for me. So those lyrics definitely have been with me for a little while. And it was just, again, really exciting for me because the instrumental version on Flow was many moons ago. And that's the only recorded version that people could hear of this song other than something they found live or something. So having those lyrics and then really being able to, again, bring my, keyboards for me, piano, that's my first instrument. That's why playing the guitar flat like that seems so natural and comfortable to me too. I did try to play acoustic guitar. I did regularly. And then I had broken my left wrist in high school when I was trying to do it like that. Yeah. And it just was not comfortable. And the doctor was like, "Doctor, will I be able to play the piano?" And he's like, "If you can play the piano in your cast, sit there at the piano, that's actually really good therapy actually for your fingers, if you can sit there and do that." So that position was just always for me, just super comfortable and really relaxed. So, it was about this idea too of Move It to how do I incorporate my keyboards into this sort of frenetic driving guitar thing that's almost relentless on that song. You almost, and it's short and sweet too. It just gets to the point. It's not this long drawn out thing. It's like, here's this feeling and emotion. Let's keep it moving. And then the rest of the record hopefully stays within that ideal, we're keeping this moving. And that's kind of what this guitar drumming thing at the core is about. It's about groove and pocket. It's not necessarily like a free form exploratory, I guess loose jazz thing that I'm doing on the guitar, which there's so many talented people that do alternative guitar playing that blow my mind, but for me, it was, I want to keep these as, vocal songs, lyric songs. And I'm a songwriter. I started on the piano. I started with the Billy Joel and Elton Johns and, James Taylor's. I want to write songs. And how do I incorporate this style now into that and support that, and support that I'm a songwriter. And so, that song for me, just being able to start the record with it too was so important. It was just, let's set the tone and as if it's like a live show and now we're in it.
Yeah, it's very like, even the instrumental itself is very catchy, and like, yeah, I think how you developed it into a song was it fits really well. And like, cool. When I was going down like all your catalog, I was like, oh, this one's been around for a minute. So
I know.
Well, that's awesome. Like, because every songwriter has those, like, what do I say to this? I mean, I like
right.
it. Like, I got a ton of little snippets like that are like, don't have like an idea yet. But so you started with piano, right? Is that
Yeah.
okay? And was that just like growing up? There's a piano in the house. What did that
Yeah,
look
my
like?
mom had a piano. Yeah,
Okay.
she would play. She had songbooks. She had the, John Denver, Barry Manilow stuff, and a lot of show tunes. So I just, when I was very young, heard her, and I just was drawn to that sound of this instrument. I didn't know, and she just saw me starting to mess around on it and take interest. I think I was like 4, and she had she knew an amazing piano teacher. She was just, Mary Blish she was just awesome. I'll go to her house and I learned. She gave me lessons on her Steinway grand piano, and then I would go home and we had a Baldwin upright, which I love, and I still love that piano. So it started with that, and it started with me, listening to these records that my parents would have in headphones, and just, how can I want to start doing this on this instrument. How do I do that? And I was in choirs too, all the way through elementary school and all that stuff. So I was always performing. Performing was always just part of my makeup, I guess. I just liked being able to share this power of music with people. You have to perform it, or you have to record it, and then people listen, right? Yeah. So it was definitely, that was the stimulus and the spark of my whole music journey, was like hearing mom on the piano,
That's important, I mean, and
Yeah.
that's an incredible like foundation. So like when
Oh
you're
yeah.
when you're going through school, like do you go to college for music as well? Or are you playing
Yeah, I
in
went to the
original
Hart School of
groups?
Music. Yeah, I went to Hart School of Music in Connecticut. I was trying to figure out my path in high school. And I was in the marching bands, orchestra, jazz band, choirs, minored in theater in college. So again, it was all this creative, 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 creative. What the heck am I going to focus on in college? So I was in the jazz band. I started taking jazz piano lessons with a guy in Hartford, and I was like, all right, well, let me see if I can get into a jazz program somewhere. It's not like I was listening and that's all I was listening to, but I was just trying to figure out my focus at that point. So I tried that, and it was the Hart School of Music is an incredible school, conservatory, and I just was not really cut out for that. It was, yeah, it was. I just wanted to be free and do all these different things. I couldn't focus on jazz. I couldn't focus on the one thing. I wound up switching to music composition halfway through, and that really opened me up for that. And then it was just always this back and forth for me of, do I want to pursue acting? Do I want to pursue music? Acting, music theater, straight theater. What am I going to do? So I was in a high school band, and I would play in college a little bit, but not so much. It wasn't until I got out of college I really had my first kind of band in Hartford, and I was like, okay, here we go. The way this feels is, awesome, incredible. This is definitely what I want to do. And that was why it was so, it's for me, it's been, I get involved with these organizations that are other people's creations. And the way that I perform those honestly is by taking them on as if they're my own. Yeah, they're just part of my makeup, and so that kept sort of sidetracking me, I think, a little bit. I would always try to do my solo stuff in New York City when I was like performing off Broadway with Stomp. I was still, but that show took so much out of us, physically, emotionally, that it was sometimes just, and again, you don't want to go into a situation and right from the beginning make people know that this is just a stepping stone for you,
Yeah.
for you to do your own thing. No, that's never been. I'm like here, and I took it on as my own, like I said, and then I couldn't do Stop anymore. Physically, I just couldn't do it anymore at some point, and I was like, okay, I'm going to the music. I'm doing music. I'm gonna get my own band. I'm in New York City. This is great. Starting to meet people, and then just again, this random occurrences, phone call. Do I want to try and do this thing with this band O.A.R? And I was like, oh, okay, let me listen to this stuff and like dive into it, and again. And all these experiences, however, right, they make us who we are today. So musically and performance wise, I wouldn't have had the journey go any other way. It was, even though I say the word sidetracked, it's really, it just kept building my vocabulary as a musician, so that when I get to where I am now, kind of where finally I can get all this stuff out, I feel like I'm in the best place to ever do it, you know, in my life. So it's really exciting, cathartic. It's very cathartic.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to kind of touch on, like, I think like acting and music. There's like, I was talking with someone who was studying acting when I was going to college for music as well, and like they brought up these different acting techniques, right? Like Meisner, and like after they explained, I'm like, and just, I mean, I know it's a specific, process, like the Meisner technique for acting, but like the core of it, being able to like fully put yourself into this thing, right? This character, and right away, that to me, that went into like whatever performance that would be, and like how do you be this role, right? And it's really hard to like know who you are in that role at first, you know what I mean? Because especially coming through like an academic kind of music background, you are becoming who's the performer or the page or whatever. There's a lot of like kind of like, and I think like that's super inspiring that you wouldn't be able to do it unless you put your all into it. Like I relate to that a lot, and I think that's that makes sense that would carry with you all the way through and build up to these opportunities. So you're playing out after this, and you get the call to join O.A.R. But like at that time, like what records were out with O.A.R.? What were you familiar with? Like,
so that was right before Stories of a Stranger came out in 2005. So, Jerry sent me, I think eight CDs, and I was like, what the, and I was just listening.
Yeah.
Let me familiarize myself before I go and meet Mark and Benj at a rehearsal space and play through some stuff and talk and see if we're compatible, And the one album I didn't really listen to was one that was just handwritten with Sharpie, because that was Stories of a Stranger. So because that was like a promo, they had just gotten the mixes or the mastering done, and I didn't really listen to that one. And then 3 days before the audition, Jerry calls. He's like, "Okay, we want you to, prep these 3 songs," and they were all from that one album I hadn't listened to really yet. So I had to like cram, which is, I guess, par for the course for me as far as studying and homework, and my studies habits have always been procrastination and last minute. But so it was just sort of one of those rare occurrences of, I was playing with my friend Dan Finnerty, and again, you do these experiences, right, that aren't maybe exactly where you thought you were going to be going with your career at this moment or this time, and I also had to learn to let anything as far as I want this done by here, or this is, I can't have that in my life. You got to just try and make as much happen as you can. And it was so interesting that one of the guys I met from Stomp, Dan Finnerty, he has this project called the Dan Band, which is amazing. And I was like, I can't do this show anymore. No one's happy. I'm in pain. He's like, all right, you want to come do this House of Blues tour and play keyboards with the Dan Band? And I was like, yes, thank you. And it was great. And the guy that did front of house and tour managing on that tour was sitting with some of the O.A.R. crew in 2005. I think it was like September. They were at a festival. And they're like, hey, anybody that the band's looking for, like a keyboard player? They don't want to just have people sit in. They want somebody who's there, who knows the songs, who's building these songs, is touring, recording, all that stuff. And he texted me, and he was like, hey, can I give these guys your number? And I said, of course. And it was just, you never know, because I was in Stomp, which wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but I met so many amazing people, including Dan, who connected me, with all these, and then I'm getting this phone call. You just never know. I just love that about life. It's so exciting, and not to feel like these things were preventing me from doing my true calling on this planet or whatever, no, they're just all part of it. They're all part of this journey. And I'm so thankful every day, that I've been able to do the things I love to do. It's incredible. It's not to say that it's not a struggle and it's not a roller coaster ride, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Right. Well, I mean, like in doing any type of performing or creative endeavor, right, there's always like, I 100% agree with you. Wherever you're at, there's always something that is beneficial to be there for, right? Even like, and not in the sense like how you pointed out, not in the sense that you're just doing this to get something out of it, but wherever you're at, someone else is there too, and everyone is trying to figure out their thing. And like just through this kind of meeting and chance, there's like this respect and growth that comes from it. So when you start playing with O.A.R, and now is this a pretty, I mean, coming from Stomp, which is, you know, that you were you touring with Stomp, or was that just?
It was, you know, at the Orpheum Theater. Then it was American tours, European tours.
Okay.
We did a Galaxy tour, which was really fun.
A Galaxy tour?
Whatever. I'm a sci-fi freak, so I'll work in some sci-fi reference whenever possible.
But so you were ready for this type of schedule and routine then.
Well, it's very different. You know, the touring routine and schedule with Stomp and O.A.R were very different. You know, with Stomp for me, it was either I was in New York City, which is where I live, and I'm commuting into the city to go to work, or I'm doing mainly like sit down tours. So there's no bus. We would fly to Philly, stay there for 2 weeks, or I would fly to Boston and we would stay there for 6 weeks, or we would do a sit down in Toronto for, 7 weeks during the summertime. That was the majority of my Stomp touring, was that type of stuff. It wasn't like on a bus from one city to the next. And the nature of Stomp as well, it was never like a one show and done kind of thing, as far as the production is concerned. But I always dreamed of being on a tour bus. That was like, as a kid, you think about it, it's like, oh man, being a recording artist and being in a tour bus and traveling around, that's got to be the most amazing thing. And I didn't get that until 2005, until I was, the tour bus still is like one of my favorite places to be. It's like the home away from home, and it feels sometimes like summer camp, which makes me feel like a kid, and young. It's a business and it's a lot of work, but there's times where it's like, I can't believe this is where I am right now doing this. And so that was, it's in some ways, I guess one could say that's like dream come true right there. Like, oh my God, I'm friggin' doing it, and I'm part of something and that has an amazing audience and continues to grow, and new songs coming out always. And I'm inspired by every single one of the band members. I've never had the attitude, and you always want to feel like I think you're in situations where people are a little better than you, because you've got to be open to that and humble and not feel that, there's always competition, healthy competition. Sure. But it's like in the nature of all of us being the best that we can be.
Right. Right. So, okay. So like on that, when you start touring with O.A.R and start being around, like I'm sure there's plenty of songwriters in Stomp, but like in a band that's more kind of songwriter driven in that way, was like, I guess, how did you see or feel your songwriting chops were kind of growing or changing or adapting during that process, or from the start of that process?
Yeah. I mean, really embracing and integrating definitely a lot of the like roots reggae feeling and vibes wasn't something that I'd really explored that much. And also it's interesting, like the way I get to play piano on so many of the O.A.R songs, and the way that the songs are written isn't necessarily how I write and play piano on my own stuff. And in some ways, playing piano and keys with O.A.R sometimes it feels almost more satisfying for me than like, why am I not writing songs like that? I think that sometimes anyway, but I've always been, harmony guy. I remember back in like, synagogue, my friend Brian and I, like we would challenge each other to be singing different harmonies to the like Friday night prayers, and so, and listening to the radio and always singing harmony parts, as much as I feel that I'm a lead singer as well. So singing with Mark is just one of the most joyful things possible, to work on. I've always, obviously, Stomp really ingrained in me this idea of, everybody's role is equally important, and that you need to listen and find your place. It really improved I was always a good listener musically, but really having that ingrained in me. So I went into the OAR world with that idea of, they already sound great without me. What is my role here? I really need to listen to what's going on and hear what's going on and figure out how I can support that, be the connective tissue at times. How can I enhance that? How can I make these moments a little more powerful? And when not to play keyboards? When am I playing percussion? When am I just singing some backup vocals and not playing anything? When am I playing four things at once and I pull a quadfecta? It's like it's all of those things, and that's why Stomp and O.A.R are so similar in this respect that no two shows are the same. Yes, you have, with Stomp, yes, it was the same run of show until Luke and Steve would come in and add new numbers or tweak numbers. But because the casts were kind of always a little different, you'd have a new person doing this role on this night. And then there's these moments of improvisation, 10% maybe of the Stomp show was moments where you could decide things on your own. You could decide what your routing was, where you were on the stage, or you had a moment where you did a solo or whatever. And with O.A.R, so that idea of it always being different was so important to me. I got to play keyboards with Pink for about a year, which was incredible. That was sort of part of my journey as well, from when I knew my Stomp days were becoming numbered, was playing arenas, with Pink and doing a lot of her promo stuff and doing Saturday Night Live with her and playing for the first time, playing keyboards in, Madison Square Garden. I was like, okay, I really need to get to this place. And Stomp is awesome. And I actually did Stomp in Madison Square Garden, at a basketball game. I remember we did during one of the breaks, we came out and we friggin' did Stomp at Madison Square Garden. So it's this constant idea that every show with O.A.R is different. Even when we play the songs, they are different, and embracing that idea and just really embracing that's a good thing. You're constantly exploring. And I've always been an explorer since I was a kid, even just going out and having adventures in the woods and finding new places for the first time. There's always been that idea. And that translates to how I see music too, and performing. It's to always be an exploration. Come on. You can't just stand up there and do the same thing every night the same way. Some people need that regularity. I'm not knocking that. I think some people need regime in their life to perform to their best ability. We're all different, right? But for me, that was never in my architecture.
Well, I definitely think it keeps you alive in that moment. It's a meditation of what's happening right now, and I think that's a really powerful lesson to take from a group like Stomp and apply in different situations. Did you find there was kind of that liberty with playing with Pink? Was that a different?
No.
I was gonna say, because was that
no? That's why. Yes, it was incredible, and it was exhilarating, and the band was incredible, but each time we played the song, we had to play our parts. You had to nail the parts. This is how they are. Music director came in during rehearsals, and we learned our parts. 2 keyboard players. So much fun. Got to travel to some places where I've never been all around the world with her. But in the back of my head, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do this indefinitely. I wasn't going to be able to have this type of musical experience, because I need that variety. I need, I guess, not control, but and the whole, I want to do my own thing.
Yeah.
There's always that in the back of the head too. How about all my songs? How about this is the internal conversations I'm having. How about all that stuff you've done? And how about this guitar drumming thing? When are you going to do that? When are you going to do that? All these little nagging voices. And again, that's why it's so exciting to finally be doing it.
Well, and it seems to have this kind of basis of just kind of I can survive as a musician, right? I think that has to exist to kind of get to that point where you can experiment and truly dive into into your own project.
Yes.
And to kind of take it back to this, I'm pretty sure I saw you with O.A.R and Dispatched in G-Love.
Oh, yes.
Cleveland.
What a great freaking tour that was. I got G-Love to guest on my next single, Hit Me, that's coming out. Yeah, I'm so excited.
I was going to bring that up because Howard sends me that advance, and it's a classic G-Love, just bending harp tech. It's all right there. That's awesome.
I love what he added to that. that's another one of those songs, like I was saying, that's been with me since my stomp days early, and I've always just heard I've jammed with harmonica players in along this journey before, and I always loved that sound. I'm a big, Stevie Wonder and freaking John Popper, and just how can I integrate that into what I'm doing. And so that was just so, again, rewarding to have him. I sent him the track. I'm like, just, here's some ideas I have, and just friggin' just feel it and do it. And he's one of those musicians, man, that he loves doing collabs. He is so giving. He loves music. He's so thankful for this journey that he's on. And I think he's on like 3 or 4 things this year already, including, mine as far as collaborative stuff, which is awesome. I'm trying to muscle my way into opening up for him too. I'm like, come on, just let me get on one of these runs you do in February, maybe next year.
The guitar act would definitely be perfect for like a G Love opener for sure.
Because you saw him during that tour. He was by himself. He was sitting down, and he had the kick, the stomp pedal, and the tambourine 16th notes he was doing with his left harmonic. He was multitasking crazy. And have you seen him with Special Sauce as well?
Yeah,
the band?
Yeah.
And I equally like both. I gotta say, I like both.
It's definitely, it's like, I remember my cousin showing me, like, because I was introduced to like G Love and Dispatch and John Butler and O.A.R. kind of around
John
the
Butler
same time.
Trio, yes.
Those are huge influences on myself, and like, so to kind of like, read about, he did busking, and then to see that type of performance, I'm like, that's what it would have been. That's sick, man.
Yes. And listen, the Stomp guys were busking in Brighton. That's where they were first on the streets with their trash cans and their staff poles and like, and just putting it out there, busking. That's how that whole thing got started. I did that a little bit in New York City. I went and got my little, you have to audition for like music under the stairs or music under the thing. And you go, and I remember auditioning Grand Central Station, this beautiful antechamber, and all these musicians come to get you get like a little license, and they assign you a spot. I was like, let me just say that I've done that in New York City in the subway. I hated it. I think I might have done it like 3 or 4 times and I, filmed a little footage or whatever. But that busking idea is so interesting. And the fact that that it's part of how he started doing this too, is like, it's almost like paying your dues in some way. Like, I did it. I was, people walking by, and then sometimes you see those stories where like there's someone busking on the street and they're doing someone's song, and then the artist of that song walks by and they sit in. I just saw that with somebody, like Eddie Vedder, I think, did that once. I remember seeing.
That's sick.
Yeah, imagine that. That would be
That'd
amazing.
be insane. Yeah, I've definitely seen. I think I saw a Chili Pepper thing, like where it was like it was Chad, and like he like heard someone. I think it was someone drumming to it too. Out of all, like it was just a dude drumming. But okay, so like, and like, so that tour was like, for me, that was like, I grew up listening and like kind of understanding songwriting through all 3 of these artists. What was it like kind of hanging out with Dispatch and G Love, as far as like, and to do kind of be crafting this record maybe, or during or around the process of that? Were there any like kind of lessons from the other 2 acts that found their way into your songwriting for this record, or?
Interesting. That's a good question. I mean, Dispatch, that was my first time hanging out with the guys. I'd only heard stories, very sparse stories, and just references to them from the O.A.R. guys, because they sort of were coming out around the same time there. And and yet there wasn't a lot of like touring together between Dispatch and O.A.R. And so, that was really exciting for me to see that come together. And I hadn't really heard a lot of the songs from that band. I watched them every night. I love that about touring too, is being able to go out and watch openers and see new music and get presented, and just the energy of hearing other people perform and then to go on to the same stage, for me, is magical. But the Dispatch songwriting, man, and those, Chad and Brad, and then just the whole, I know that band has gone through permutations, I think, over the year, but it's just, they've kept it so honest and true to their sound. And I was blown away. The musicianship and the vocals and their freedom, just how free they are, to just do whatever they want and present it how, and people love them. I took a lot from that. I took a lot from both of them they're just very almost raw, and more raw than I ever thought I was going to be, because again, this idea of everything had to be so polished and perfect for me, and that was part of, I think, about this inspiration for me of in that pandemic feeling too, of like, man, I need to let this shit go. I need to just be open to everything, and I need to embrace this idea of just like, it can be loose. Some of the best recordings that we know of any artist we ever hear, we listen to, and there's all sorts of looseness and people a little bit behind the beat, or not everyone nailed that hit exactly together, or the tunings, or he hit a wrong note over there. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's just about this whole thing, the experience, the global experience of it. And yeah, I thought that was really great. That package was just the whole thing felt so just organic and rootsy, and just collaborating and us doing songs together on stage and encores, and that for me, that celebration too, when we do those things, when we do a headlining summer tour, and we try to do things with all the openers, and find songs that work for all of us.
That's cool.
It's definitely one of the it's like the icing on the cake, sort of like, okay, we all can just celebrate together this. And that's how that whole tour was, and it was, and hearing that, watching different songs be played, and how G Love would sort of also, work in different ideas, and, his family was there the whole time. I mean, like, his kids would come out and play harmonica with him. Like, just, I mean, this idea of family, that was like the family. That was like Sly and the Family Stone band tour. It was like this, we're all in this family. And everyone had their families out. It was, yeah. I'm so happy you saw that. Where did you see that?
Oh, in Cleveland. In Cleveland.
Yeah. The Nautica?
Nautica, yes.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite places, man. I remember the first time we played there, and I saw one of the big cargo ships go behind the stage.
Oh, that's sick.
I turned around and was like, what the? Yeah. Yeah, that was a great tour, man. Really great.
So, okay, to kind of dive into more of like, so it makes sense kind of knowing your journey started with piano, because like I watched a couple of videos on your guitar technique, and I was just like, the thumb placement, like I spent all day teaching, and I'm like always teaching my kids like, oh yeah, you can't play with your thumb, you gotta put it here. And then I'm like, I watch you, I'm like, well, I'm wrong.
Sorry.
I hope they never find this video. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, I know.
But no, like that makes sense, because I've been thinking like, why would he, like, it makes sense to go down, but to play like to incorporate like the piano fingering in that sense, it like makes sense, like where kind of how that would develop. So like when you're experimenting with this and is it in an open tuning?
Yeah, so it's dad fad.
Okay.
Sometimes it's an F natural and F sharp.
Right.
Sometimes it's dad gad.
Gotcha. So they make it minor or major. So like,
so my thumb is, so I look at the neck like a piano. It's a chromatic neck, right? Yeah. Open tuning. So each of the frets is just half step, half step, half step. So I've been able to visualize the neck and assign my own notes in that open tuning D to the frets, which translates basically more or less to how I see the piano. It's not white and black keys because it's just all frets, but and then so that left thumb is really doing most of the chordal work up and down the neck. It's also, is the thumb going across the whole neck? Is it going across just 5 of the strings, or 4 of the strings, or 3 of the strings? Sometimes it's only going across 2 of the strings. So there's that flexibility with that left thumb if you're playing right-handed, right?
Right.
And then the left index finger, the pointer finger, is the one that comes around the top as well, and he's the one doing color tones. He's making that F sharp to a natural,
right? Okay.
Or he's doing a seventh, a dominant seventh, and then the pinky in that left hand is underneath the neck, and that sometimes is doing rhythmic stuff in relationship to what the right hand is doing. So it's sort of, again, for me, it's second nature now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really trying to think about how I would notate it. It took Stomp, I think, it took Luke and Steve probably, 15 years to finally figure out how they can notate that show. And they did. It is notated, because at some point I do want to, like, share this style. I want to do workshops. I want to, I was talking to somebody the other day about even maybe some of like the therapeutic, where the guitar, you're sitting there and the guitar is flat on your lap and you're feeling these sonic vibrations of this open tuning. And when you hit it just right, what it sounds like. Same thing sitting at a beautiful Steinway grand piano. You don't have to play one note because the instrument is so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have this open tuning, and hopefully you have a guitar that doesn't sound horrible, right? And it can't keep tuning, but there's something very, it's sound waves going through your body. That's why sitting behind a piano for me and feeling the sound waves of the strings hitting my body, sitting behind a keyboard will never be able to, maybe if you're sitting behind a Rhodes that had the suitcase with the speaker built into it, you can feel that power. That's just an amp, though. That's a speaker. That's right. I don't know. It's so interesting, but I did want to have MikelParis guitar drumming, those two names be kind of synonymous and connected before I started telling people exactly how I do it, so that someone doesn't come out and do it better than me and get more successful before I do. No, you can't keep everything. You can't hide everything. Yeah. We can't keep everything. We have to put it out, right? But right. I've been trying to be at least about that side of things before I really start showing the mechanics and exactly what each finger's doing and how I'm doing it. And here's ways to practice. Here's simple, like I remember when I auditioned for Stomp, like they just taught us the foot and the clap. Let's start with foot and the clap. And they're looking to see who can get it. And they slowly add it into the rhythm. Dum, 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 clap. Now let's do the dum, 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 clap, dum, da, dum, clap. Same thing with the guitar drum, I think. I feel like if I really broke it down and kept it simple, guitar drumming 101, at some point I'm going to do that. But first I got to get this music out.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, and that's exciting because I can't remember the cat who there was like a kind of a craze for a bit with because I play a lot of open tuned guitars in my band, and then like it that took a lot of like I got a lot out of like how John Butler kind of approaches the neck and like mapping that out, and like so with open tuning I kind of get that, and like. But at the same time, I remember when I first started like getting serious about stuff, there's all these percussive guitar players who were like, like Andy, what's his name? I can't.
Yeah, I know.
McKee
I know you're talking about. Yeah, Andy and Khaki King.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, yeah.
But it's even what you do is like it's a whole different approach than that, and that's what I think is so cool about it. Like and like how you use it to not just like not that this is the whole show, but we talked about it earlier. But this is a supporting element to a song, right? And I think that makes it an incredible texture and tonality and key difference, and like. So that's exciting that you're thinking along that lines too. So like when you kind of got this going, right, and kind of mapped out how you can make chords, what did like, I guess some of the process look like for, cause I've noticed like, cause I've watched a couple of your live streams too. And like you do this like, interesting, like there's a piano song and then there's a guitar drumming song. Like, I guess when you're going to write a song, what do you have like is it just kind of experiment, feeling the moment and seeing what happens and then writing from that? Or do you kind of go in like, I have an idea for something that is going to be like, it needs a groove, so I'm going to use the guitar drumming. You know what I mean? Like when you're writing with these two elements, these like, do you kind of go in knowing you're going to pick one or the other, or is it just kind of a feel thing?
No, again, man, I've also really embraced the idea of just trying as much it out. Don't get set in, this is the way I did it from the beginning, and that's how it's going to be. That was also something that really changed for me in the last 4 years was, even the keys and the tempos. So a lot of my writing, like I said, is voice memos. I'm coming up with a melody, a bass line sometimes, or a groove, or I'm in the kitchen and I'm stomping. I come up with a rhythmic thing, and I'm just recording these voice memos, all these ideas as far as new songs.
Right.
And so from that perspective, I'm not really thinking about
either
instrumentation at all. I'm just thinking about following this creative spark as much as I can in the next minute or 5 minutes or however long I'm following this idea. and then I'll go back, and then it's just random usually, because a lot of the songs I'm playing keyboards and doing the guitar drumming thing. So, often it's just an experimentation. It's back and forth. And the beauty of it is that usually I wind up on doing both. I do both, and that gives me just so much joy to be able to make them communicate these two disciplines that I have. It's rhythmic too, of as far as vocal percussion that I do and body percussion and, shakers and tambos and all that stuff. And I love hand percussion. I can sit behind a drum set with sticks and hold a beat, but for me, the hand percussion is what it's always, but things I can do with my hands. And so I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, you ask, and it's different sometimes, but sometimes I will just be sitting there with my guitar in my lap already playing through stuff. And maybe I'll just all of a sudden come up with something. And my hands are almost just doing it on their own, some sort of pattern. Oftentimes on the guitar now, it's a new combination of these techniques. It's a new sort of sequence of a pattern that I do where I'm doing a thumb and a hit and then a poke and then a flick but it's about creating these rhythmic textures. I think that's a big difference between the piano and the guitar for me. The guitar for me is about all of these little techniques of how I'm pulling this sound out of this acoustic guitar. At the core of it, it's about creating these rhythmic textures. It's rhythm. It really is. And so that's the difference for me too, as far as, this is just one of the ways I write songs, and it's not me focusing on, look at all these different things I can do with the acoustic guitar, and writing stuff where it's more, again, like I said, more freeform or whatever, where I'm trying to showcase this as much as possible. No, it's just part of this. This is creating the rhythmic texture. This is creating the backbeat. This finger's doing the snare. This one's plucking the bass. They're all doing this one's doing the subdivided 16th notes between these two fingers. So you're getting like a hi-hat kind of vibe. And then my dad and I built a stomp platform many years ago. So I have a 2x2 wooden stomp platform that I put a kick drum mic in. So during my live shows, I'm incorporating that as well.
Yeah. I think I saw that. It was in one of the videos. And I was like, oh my God, this is a whole nother aspect of this. And
so it can be like 4 on the floor. It was so interesting. I did this podcast the other day, and two of the guys were like, "Man, this is like dance music. Like I want to move to this. I don't want to sit down, and listen to this. This makes me want to move." I'm like, for me, thinking about that, where you can be by yourself. I imagine me in like a festival, doing this by myself, where I've seen people like watching G Love, right? And you listen and you're like, holy shit, all this shit is going on at the same time. This is amazing, right? I want that. I feel like that's going to be a similar thing, but it's me standing there on the stomp platform with 2 vocal mics and this guitar. Like, how is he doing all that with that setup? I'm super excited,
dude. It's gonna be super sick, and I agree with the other guys. Like it definitely, because and also one thing that I found really interesting is like when the groove's established, right? A drum kit will come in and it brings this whole other like groove to the tune, and like it was like,
oh yeah.
And it's interesting. Did you record? Who drummed on some of these tunes? Was it you? Was it somebody else?
I didn't do any drummings. Okay. I didn't do any drummings. I did mostly everything else except for obviously like electric guitars and stuff.
Right.
So I had this guy I met some years back in Syracuse, Liam. He did some of the drumming, and then the track I did with Of Good Nature, David Hamilton Jr. drummed on that. He is like, I don't know.
Yeah, those guys are pretty sick.
He's like Carter. Both of them are like it. When you play with any musician who is just that inspiring and that incredible, and you can give them one of your songs and they get it right away, and they do what you heard in your head and even more. They make it even so much better. Of Good Nature and I are working on a lot of stuff together now, and being able to do more stuff with David, the drummer, is so exciting to me.
How do you?
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you know those guys? How did you come across Of Good Nature?
So I met them through the O.A.R. camp early on, probably playing Charlotte, playing the music factory there. And there was a little bar called Small Bar that was sort of part of the whole place. So there would always be stuff going on there after we would play. So we would always go over. It's a very small bar. And one of the times Of Good Nature was there. And I was like, you guys are freaking great. And Cam, big O.A.R. fan. And again, there's this Charlotte community of musicians that I've got really friendly with. And so I've just always kept in touch with them, and I always been, and how, he's like, I've been working this for 10 years. He's been like, Cam does, like, he just does everything. He's like me. He's like, I do everything because I have to do everything at this point. I'm like, yeah, no one's going to care more about it than you do, and work harder than you do with your stuff. So I started sitting in with them. I started just sitting in with the band last year, a year and a half ago, and playing keys. And again, he is so, he lets me do whatever the heck I want, and O.A.R. was pretty much that way too. Just like a lot of the songs didn't have keyboards, and I was able to sort of explore my role, and Of Good Nature's kind of letting me do that too. And there's mutual respect there. And, we want to do more and more. And, Downtime we released as a co-release. It's the first time I've ever done that. We're both primaries on it. So it's going out to all his DSPs and all my DSPs. And I've gotten the most listens and streams in the last 2 days from this release than I have doing my own thing ever.
It's, yeah, that's
so the value of it, you're just, what are all the things that we can be doing as independent artists to get people to freaking hear our stuff? That's, and so you just try everything. Try everything.
Yeah. Well, it's because I was going to say, my band, we opened up for, I play in a band called C Level, letter C dash level. And we opened up for, Of Good Nature last time they were in Cleveland, or maybe last time they were in Cleveland.
Okay.
And like, they're incredible. They were super cool dudes, and they were super tight, and it was a super sick show. But anyway, so when I saw him on there, I'm like, oh, cool. Them Angelo. Okay. Mike knows what's up. Like, this is,
that's not even, we haven't even talked about Vernon yet. So
I know. But, so to kind of put a pin on that really quick, like,
yeah.
Okay. So as a drummer, you gotta imagine it'd be super interesting for them to kind of like, okay, this is where you're doing on the guitar, where I can accent it, and and I think they did a really good job with it. I think it really brings it as a tune together and highlights each part of it. But Vernon,
I agree. And listen, that was part of the experiment for this record too. It was like, how can all these other instruments have a dialogue with this guitar stuff, this guitar drumming? How can it work? Sonically and EQ wise and rhythmically and just tonality and timbre, all of those things. How can all these different things work? And at the core of it for me was always, but everything needs to support this guitar drumming thing. Not that things can't have moments and come, like, just same thing with like Stomp, like you're finding your moments and then you're supporting, you're giving focus, and for me, the focus needed to be on the guitar drumming, on Guitar Drumming 1. It's in the title. And it was the first time ever really me feeling, again, just confident as I was figuring out this release schedule and how am I organizing all of these different songs from all these different eras of, and I was like, fuck it, man. It's time for the guitar drumming. Just embrace it. Just do it. And I've got 3 records ready,
That's sick.
Yeah.
Man. Oh shit, what was I gonna say on that? They will come back, but
it's okay. Yeah.
The other track, Good to Go.
Yeah.
So how? Okay, with I guess with Vernon, how'd you get is that another O.A.R. like kind of acquaintance or?
No, but O.A.R. and Vernon have done some things, which has always made me so happy. But it was during that transition time for me in 2005 where I was done with Stomp. And I was searching for what the heck I was going to do. And I was able to meet up with a really great engineer, Hector Castillo, who I just saw again because he was engineering some new O.A.R. songs. Again, just crazy, just like this coming full circle and small world kind of thing. And so I was in this transition time and I was like, all right, let me let me at least, Hector was like, yeah, come on in. We'll record this guitar stuff. That was that Move It version, instrumental version that you hear on Flow, that very first release of this idea of this song. And so I was in Guitar Center. I had the CD of a mix of Move It in my pocket or whatever, in my bag. And I went into Guitar Center on Union Square in New York City. And, they have those great listening rooms in the back where you can listen to all the different speakers. And so I was like, oh man, I want to go just listen to this, and hopefully no one's in there. So I found a quiet time and closed the door and went in and listened to Move It in there and all the different speakers. I was like, okay, it gave me a little validation, that moment.
Yeah.
It got me really excited. And I was just walking around the music store. I saw Vernon Reid. And I recognized him, and, big Living Colour fan growing up. Jesus, talk about what an amazing sound, and just that band and the songs and the guitar and everything. So I went up. I was feeling very confident. We like, again, it's a roller coaster, right?
Yeah,
we go. Yeah. I was feeling confident about this guitar drumming and this particular. I was like, hey man, I just introduced myself, and I was like, man, I'm really, big fan, and I got this guitar style I'm working on. I just would love to, pick your brain and just see what you think about it. And if it's, partly because I knew it was cool, but I also just wanted to see what he thought. And so he was like, yeah, he said yes. I was like, okay. So we went back into the room. I had already chosen out the speakers that I liked it the best on in that room.
Yeah.
And I fucking played it for him. And he was like, you got congas on this? I was like, no, man, that's all me on the guitar. He's like, oh shit. Okay. He's listening, no vocals. He's listening. He's like, I get it. He's like, I friggin' get it. And we exchanged numbers, and then like we just kept in touch. And this is 20 years ago.
Holy shit, that's so sick.
So we kept in touch. And then every now and then I would see him at something, or I'd go see him, Living Colour at Irving Plaza or something, and and he always knew, and I would keep him posted on a new recording that I was working on with this style. And then last year I was like, okay. Collab. Who do I have on my my cell phone? Who's in my address book of someone that I feel could make sense on one of these 8 or 10 songs that I was thinking about for this first thing? And Good to Go has been with me again for a while. I remember I wrote that in San Francisco. Stomp, talking about Stomp. We were doing a sit down show in San Francisco. It was amazing. And I opened it with the cast. I was there for like 6 weeks. I subletted a place in Haight-Ashbury. It was amazing. And I had my guitar with me, so I was also writing a lot of stuff. And I remember working on that song there, Good to Go. And then I just friggin' texted him. And then I called him. And I texted him, and then I sent him the rough mix that I had. And then we spoke on the phone. I stayed at a friend's place in Chicago. I was on tour from somewhere. And we spoke for 15 minutes, and he was like, man, so, he was so excited to be a part of it. And we worked out an arrangement, and then he sent me a couple stereo tracks. That's it. He didn't send me all this stuff. And he played stuff. Some of the parts he played on there completely transformed sections, like the outro of Good to Go. That whole outro where he's doing an ascending chromatic thing on the guitar, but on my guitar drumming, I'm doing a descending thing on the.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I would have never thought of adding that. That's, again, this amazing thing about getting a fresh pair of ears on some of these, on all songs really, but in particular these songs that have been with me for so long. And it was transformative. And that song for me is, in my head, I always just heard him. There was a moment of worry, I remember, when I started listening to it, and I was like, wow, this is really jazzy. It's like, it's really bluesy and almost tender at points sounding, And in my brain, I was, you think about Vernon Reid in the context of Living Colour. A lot of it is that just incredible tone and the fastest stuff, it's just holding on these notes and then just this and inventive and chromatic and creative. I was like, where's that? And then he hits that solo section, the first one, which in my brain was always kind of what I heard for the most part from Vernon, was like ripping that solo in the middle section and the outro. And then and I heard that and I was like, okay, I just was like, I wet my pants. And then I went back and started listening to all the other stuff you put in there. And I was like, okay, this is, I had gotten it to a point. Again, it's just always trying to get to that A game, just take it to the A game. And it was just, and I'm bugging him about it. I was like, man, I can't wait to do this live with you, and I can't wait, I'm like, yeah, let's get me in on some of those living color support slots. But, so he loves it. And I'm so thankful that was also one of these. It's not just a random thing. I'm sitting there just trying to find a way to contact somebody because I think they would be good to have on this. These are also, not to use that word again, like it's just like coming full circle, like cathartic, dream come true kind of after decades of this idea. It's like sometimes I think that I have hundreds of years to live on this planet and I'm in no hot rush or hurry. It's so weird, but everything has its time and place. And again, it's like I was always a late bloomer, so I'm okay. I'm okay with this. Everything has its time, and if it took 20 years for this collab, then so be it. It's great. I'm so happy that it happened with all three of these,
For sure. Like that's incredible. Like just to have an idea and a vision and to see it fully kind of come like together in the right way with everything. I think that's incredibly important to the vision itself, but also to not just like put it out there as like a gimmick or a thing and I think this new set of tunes really, really brings that vision in. And the thing I was going to bring up earlier was one thing I noticed, and maybe it's just a little bit more with some of this new with this new material. It's like I noticed there was a little bit more exploration with your head voice than in previous tunes. So
don't get me started on that. Wait till the next guitar drumming. Yeah. Listen, one of my big inspirations, Prince is a huge inspiration for me.
There's definitely some Prince-esque grooves in the.
Please, thank you. Talk about falsetto. I mean, the more you learn about Prince, you listen to his first couple of records, it was like 90% falsetto head voice.
Yeah.
And he, cause he loved the female voice. He loved women's voices and he wanted to emulate that, and just huge inspiration for me, so many of those incredible falsetto singers, head voice singers, but I've always really liked my falsetto and my head voice and been working on my mix as well, that smooth transition to the falsetto.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. And sometimes I can do it. Sometimes I can do it if I'm really relaxed, I'm in the right thing and I'm thinking about yawning and all that. It's like, okay, there we go. But I can sing falsetto all day and all night. It's the most relaxed way for me to sing too. So guitar drumming too is going to have a couple that you're really going to like because they're almost all falsetto singing for me. And it changes, right? It's, and to be able to smoothly go back and forth within the context of a song too, I think is magic.
Yeah. It's, oh man, like it's, as I've gotten older and played more gigs, like when you're playing for like 4-hour bar gigs and stuff like that, you're like, yo, this is great to be able to do, like, to be able to, and it opens up a whole other range of what you can reach and like, but it's very hard to maintain and to do correctly. So there's all these, it's a tricky thing. Yeah. And that's why, so when I hear someone like doing it and doing it good, I was like, yeah, dude, this is what's up.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Well, hey man, I really appreciate your time, your talent, and getting the dive into your career. I'd love to pick your brain again when Volume 2 comes out. And,
let's do it.
All right, man. Very cool. Very cool.
Dude, I appreciate you listening and being interested. That's awesome.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig At The Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.